Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Subplot of Course, a podcast discussing a new science fiction literary work every month, or in this case, every 1 or 2 months, by casual fans just like you. I'm Stavros, and with me is someone who would probably rather be teaching students in the Matrix instead of in person, Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
I don't know about that. That's sad.
It's true. And also with me is Vincent, who, rumor has it, didn't actually need the assistance of any cybernetic enhancements in order to have a child. Say hi, Vincent.
Whoa, man! I guess that's true. Yeah, sure. Hello.
100% biological. Yep.
Yeah, I would say so. We're not in the future yet.
And finally, we're also joined by John, who I'm 90% certain isn't an AI superconsciousness masquerading as an engineer.
Only 90%. Only.
There's
10%
a little bit
is
of doubt
fro.
in there.
10% is fro. 90%.
It's true.
Hello.
All right, so for episode 4, we're talking about Neuromancer, published in 1984 by William Gibson. And as usual, you should be prepared for spoilers because we're going to be talking about a lot of plot from the book. So speaking about the book, I'll quickly go over the plot. So it's sometime in the future, indeterminate future, somewhat dystopian. There's big, ugly cities out there. Everyone has these, variety of genetic and cybernetic modifications for all kinds of people. Mostly the seedy underbelly of society, because that's basically what we're dealing with in this book.
Rich people too.
Oh yeah, some rich people too. That's true. And the main character is a guy named Case. He's a former computer hacker / big-time drug addict, and he's recruited by a motley crew to carry out a series of elaborate heists and voyage into what passed for cyberspace in the 80s in order to free an AI from the control of a powerful corporation that has a space station out in space, which you must travel to. So that basically covers the plot of the book. So let's jump right into the topics. And this is the big one that stood out for me. It's drugs. There's a lot of drugs in this book, I feel like.
Star Wars is a big fan of drugs, if you haven't.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that. And I'm trying to figure out if there's some kind of thematic thing going on here, or if the guy was just like, drugs are great. Pretty much everyone takes drugs. The main character is a drug addict. And even I'd say drugs even play a big part in where the climax of the book, where the AI that doesn't want it to be freed, Neuromancer, is trying to trap him in that cyberspace reality with Linda Lee, and the Rastafarian dude just gives him an OD of drugs, and drugs save the day.
Yay! I don't know. As I mentioned in every single one of these things, I was like, it was the 80s. Of course it's drugs.
So you're basically calling it's 80s, therefore drugs.
to be reductionist, yes.
How do you guys feel about this?
I think William Gibson was really trying to push the boundaries a lot, not only in tech, he coined the term cyberspace. He came up with the whole plugging into the internet before the internet was invented, since the book was written in 1984. I think the same thing can be said for the drug thing, is that he was trying to take whatever drugs he had ever experienced or heard of, and he was trying to push it to like a new level. He's like, we're going to give Case a pancreas, which, and liver, which metabolize drugs, so he can never get high ever again. And then like at the very end climactic scene, like they super OD him, so he like breaks free of the matrix of the internet. And so I was like, wow, I think he's actually just trying to be as creative as possible given the 80s. So the 80s, like advent of like web kind of internet kind of stuff, let's push it to the max. All the drugs, let's push it to the max. AI, let's push it to the max. Like, I think this book really min-maxed a lot of the topics, and I think he did a good job with the drugs.
So you maxed out the drugs.
He maxed out the drugs.
He
minimized the romance, and he maximized the drugs.
Yeah, that is true. There's very minimal romance in this book. What do you think, John? Just extra drugs, extra fun?
I don't know if he was. I think he was writing from his point of view. I suppose. He's grew up mostly in the 70s, and I think that he thought about. I'm not entirely sure what his socioeconomic standing was, but I imagine he envisioned that the dystopian or semi-dystopian future that he saw, where people are. That's what he envisioned a seedy underbelly would have. It would have tons of drugs and drug addicts, and maybe that wasn't a crazy thing to think of if you grew up in the late 70s.
Yeah, in terms of the just overall setting, it seemed to like I didn't even think twice of it being like drugs. It just seemed to fit well with the setting, with the underground and criminals. And it's like if you were just a guy doing stuff, making money, like go spend your money on drugs because that's what people do.
It was kind of shocking to me just because there's no like drugs is bad message here. It's just like drugs are drugs, and rich people do them, and poor people do them, and plot devices use them.
Yeah.
You expected a bumper sticker say, "Don't do this. This turned out poorly."
I really wanted it to be like, drugs are bad. Okay, kind of a
Wow,
message.
Star Wars is a dare kid. If you didn't know.
That's right.
This is kind of what I was going to get into later, but like when we start talking about all the different genres and stuff like that, I felt that was just part of it feeling like a very real world. Like this doesn't, even though we're a sci-fi podcast, this is the first one that's felt like more of like a world that's been constructed versus like an adventure or something like that.
Yeah, they did a really good job of the whole world construction, and the drugs are definitely part of it.
And that actually leads to the very next topic, which is the biological and cybernetic enhancements I kind of mentioned in the kind of talk through the plot of the book. I was also looking for a message here, like Case, actually the main character of the book, he basically has 0 in terms of enhancements, and maybe that's just to make him relatable. He actually gets damaged by that mental sabotage, so he can't hack at the start of the book. But I mean, as far as the other main characters, like Molly's pretty, she's had her reflexes enhanced and had those knives put in and stuff. And Armitage is just a reprogrammed human, and Riviera's augmented with his holographic skills and whatever. But Case is actually pretty bland. So do you guys feel like there's any kind of messaging with the biological and cybernetic enhancements here, or is it just the same thing? Like, why not maximize those things?
I think he makes a really good point of creating the world where there's rich and there's poor. So like the rich people have maximum cybernetic enhancements, like the Tessier ash pools, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like they live forever. They just clone themselves and they keep living forever. And so they represent the max in terms of like implants and stuff like that, and as well as their cyber ninja, right? And then like Case is like a dude who made a lot of money by being a hacker, and he had the internet like implanted in his brain. He could like get on whenever he had all those enhancements. And then when he basically tried to embezzle some money, they broke all of his enhancements. So it's like he has no money, he has no way of making money. He just like the small time drug deals and stuff like that. And so it really makes sense that he has no enhancements, because he lost all of the stuff because he backstabbed his employer and he got screwed. And everyone else has got like enhancements as much as they can afford, but they keep saying that, oh, the enhancements we're giving you to give you back your ability to get on the internet is like, it's worth like the monopoly on like, genetic enhancements for the next 10 years if we sell this technology. And it's like, wow, I think he does a good job of saying basically Case is a poor guy and there are some really rich ass people out there, and it's kind of a whole spectrum.
Yeah, it seems like they introduced the main character as like he's talented, but he's still like a grunt in terms of the overall scheme of the underworld, and just him not having like all these great enhancements or anything, but being, super good at his hacking skills.
I feel like it's not like he's enhanced at the start of the book. They just, his employers just damage his brain. Like they damage the biological component, like the natural biological components, to make it so he can't hack.
Yeah, he's like a surfer who got his legs cut off, and then now they're giving him back his legs, and it's like, oh, now go surf again. It's like, yes, I can do it.
Nice.
That's a great analogy. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I know. Hang 10, dude.
Okay.
I don't know what John felt.
Yeah, how do you feel about this?
He's a relatable character. I think that Gibson was trying to, he obviously made him, a gifted hacker and somebody who they were looking to hire to do all these jobs, but not necessarily because he would be the easiest. They could hire somebody else who would be easier, who would not require enhancement.
Yeah.
I think they explain that later in the book. At least the way that I understood it was that they thought that his sort of his social profile would have led him to be cooperative with the AI to go through with this. Right? The AI is trying to predict who's going to do what at what time. What's going to give him the best outcome over this very long generational scheme of getting himself released from Tessier Ashpool. So I think he thought, he's a good enough hacker. He's a good enough hacker, a good enough cybernetic individual. But he had the social I guess, the social viewpoint that he would go along with this whole plan.
Yeah. Well, like Wintermute or whatever decided like he's probably the best bet from both a social and skills viewpoint.
That's right.
I mean, I think that like John made a good point is that like William Gibson actually did not make a super like overpowered protagonist. Like, Princess of Mars, a bunch of other sci-fi books. It's really tempting for the author to be like, I want to make my ideal hero who like kicks everyone's butt and is super cool and gets all the girls. In this book, he doesn't get the girl. He doesn't kick everyone's butt. But he's a very like convincing character because it's like he's lost a lot and therefore he has a lot of skin in the game. Like, okay, well, we can give you back the internet, but only if you can finish this job. And it's like, oh God, I love the internet so much. Okay, I'll do it. It's like that level. It's not like the guy's overpowered. It's like he has a really compelling reason to do this job. It's like, I want the internet back. I want you to fix my body. You do it for me and I'll do the job. And I'm not going to necessarily kick ass everywhere left and right, but I'm going to do my job and try and get the reward. And I find that very convincing as a character development kind of thing.
I think he literally. So I feel like that. I mean, yes, I think he's probably makes him more relatable because he doesn't have these crazy enhancements. But I think this is a lot of the key like actiony or plot-driven components in the book by Molly's SimStim. So
Yeah.
he's like watching what's happening. It's like he's literally doing nothing and experiencing the world through someone else.
Yeah, that was one thing. I was like, why is he long when 90% of what he does is just watch what Molly is doing?
Hey, who wouldn't watch her?
Well, he has to experience everything that she experiences. I actually kind of think that part of the book made it less. The book is supposed to be focused on this cybernetic journey, which could be really boring. Maybe we'll talk about that, about how he portrays it. But it could be really boring, but he doesn't, because he doesn't make it all about, busting through and the firewalls and creating all kinds of new algorithms to break their security setting. No, the book is more of kind of like a spy novel kind of, right? Because there's this actionable person who goes in and breaks in physically. There's like a cat burglar, and then he's like the tech guy in the back of the van.
It's like a heist.
Yeah, he's in the van. He's the guy in the van. That's just awesome.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I liked. Is it wasn't just like this. I was expecting it to be more this hyper focus, like the Matrix or something, where like he's the one who can do the things and all that stuff. But no, it's like he's a guy.
It's like Mission Impossible.
He's part of the team, and
he's not Tom Cruise. He's one of the other guys. But
that's right. I feel like he's supposed to be this hacker, right? But I mean, even when they do this, crazy break-in of Tessier Ashpool, he doesn't even really do that much. They have this like Chinese hacking program in the Matrix, and he literally just like rides it down, and that's pretty much like he doesn't actually do any of the hacking. He just like he's watching Molly. He's following this Chinese hacking program at the Tessier Ashpool. What's this guy doing? He's kind of just watching a lot.
But he's supposed to be the tech expert. So if anything technically did happen, he was supposed to step in. So it's kind of like, in any bank robbing heist, like Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, whatever, you got the getaway driver, you've got the guy who breaks open the safe, you got the watch guy, you've got the guy in the van. Like sometimes the guy in the van does nothing. He just sits there and watches all the guys shoot everyone to death. But if he wasn't in the van, then you wouldn't have covered that base. And then your job could have gone really bad.
So our main character is the guy who sat in the van and did nothing? Is that what I mean?
No, I think he did something. He did something.
A little something.
Let's talk about. This is a good time to talk about the how they described, I guess, the cybernetic world and about hacking in a metaphoric way.
Yeah, sure.
Before the internet was invented. This is
because, so you mentioned he didn't do anything. Well, yeah, that Chinese program was sort of given to him essentially, and he just sort of watched it burrow into the security system. But at the very end of the book, he has to ride this quote unquote shark-looking device or something. He in this cybernetic world, he jumps on a shark and he runs it through a whole bunch of. I'm guessing there's more security firewalls of some kind in order to break through. And then the whole thing is just like the movie Hackers, where they just gloss entirely over technical whatsoever, and he's riding this like metaphoric animal essentially. So I guess perhaps Gibson was sort of getting to the fact that maybe that's him doing something, that he's hacking, I guess, even though he's displayed it in the book as him like riding a shark.
I think he's playing an MMORPG. That's how hacking works in the future.
He's riding a shark through Azeroth. Yeah,
level 80 hacker on a rideable shark.
Wow. Okay. Well, so let's switch gears a little bit. So personally, I may have mentioned on this podcast before. I basically listen to these books, in audiobook form on my commute, and I had a hard time following this book, at least compared to the other ones.
English is a prerequisite, Stavros.
That is true. I had to first. I had to be like, "Yep, I've mastered the English language." Then I was reading this or listening to this book, and I think it's not that the book is. I think just compared to the other ones we've done, the guy uses a lot denser language. Like this, I feel like this feels a lot less pulpy than like John Carter.
No, and I was actually wanting to talk about this where like it took me a long time to get used to the fact that like the transitions are very fast. There's no like, and then he switched it off. Like 90% of the time it's like, and then blah said, and you realize like, oh, that's the program and the thing. Like he switched over, or it'll just be like a 2-word thing of like, then he switched, blah, blah, blah. Like it's very dense, which I think added to the sense that it feels, like you said, much less pulpy, much less like organized as an adventure or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not just the language, but the guy integrates a lot of like future slang into this
he
book.
made up cyberspace, which sucked. He also made up ice.
That's another piece of slang that he integrated, right? Like the word cyberspace didn't really exist before.
Jacking in cyberspace, intrusive countermeasure, like procedures and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, I didn't really understand what a flatline was because I missed the description of when it's the hacker that's been killed by AIs briefly.
Yeah.
So I want to see what do you guys think of this? Was this kind of more of a slog than the previous books, or did you kind of get into it, like helped your world building?
I think that reading it is way better than listening to it in this case, because reading allows you to go back dynamically like half a second to reread the phrase and be like, okay, I understand what it means now. I can see that if you were an audiobook listener, you would totally have like only comprehended maybe like 70% of the plot, because so many like slang terms and stuff like that would have flown by you. But I think that it's like this is the reason why this book won the Nebula, the Hugo, and like the Philip K. Dick Award as well, is because the writing was so dense and it was so like kind of like vivid that you almost were required to read it to really get at the density. Like there are other authors which write with very strong metaphorical, very strong like prose, like kind of, and it's really hard to understand until you really delve down into the language they're using. And when you do, it's like, wow, that was really well written, that sentence. Like it conveyed so much information, but only if I took a few seconds to really delve into the sentence and understand what he was trying to say. And I think he did a good job doing that, which is why he won all those awards.
Vince, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one, actually.
Unacceptable. Stop immediately.
I'm going to have to take a contrarian view, because I actually think that, I don't know how, Stavros, you listened to this book as an audiobook. It was painful to read.
Oh.
I thought it's very difficult. It doesn't get a lot of momentum, especially because he switches scenes quickly and in between chapters. So he doesn't even really finish the same. He doesn't really finish a scene within a single chapter. He moves on in between, and then he uses not only enormous amounts of slang, but he uses unique words, and he doesn't explain what
That's the best part.
mean.
That's the best part.
You have to figure it out.
You have to really pay attention. That's
the fun. It's a puzzle when you read. Like,
yeah, that'd be okay.
I listened to it twice. I had to listen to it twice, and I was like, and listen to the second time, I was like, wow, I like understand what's happening now, because I get like all of this slang now.
Like the one thing I found especially surprising was, the few times there were like violent action scenes, how it seems like it's written almost entirely as impressions versus like descriptions of the action itself, which once I got used to that, I liked a lot, because it felt more like Case's story, his perspective, what's going on everything, versus it being like I said, like an event you're supposed to be listening to and finding out what happened and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I like it. I like it when it's not spoon-fed to you. It's like, if a pain blossom like in his spine, it's like as opposed to, a bullet entered his spinal cord from behind from like a sniper you didn't see. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see it both ways, but I kind of like, the whole not being filled in and having to guess what happened.
So, John, did you dislike this book more because of the writing style, would you say?
Oh, easily. Yeah. Definitely.
Never again.
If I bought this book, I would go back to the store and ask for a refund.
No!
Interesting.
I would say, this is not a book. This is not writing. You have to explain to me how things, what's going on in the book. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of barfed words in the pages.
Wow.
Because he didn't even explain some things like you guys said. Okay, you have to figure it out from the context and so forth. Other descriptions of what's going on. He doesn't explain that till the last chapter of the book. In some cases, I'm like, well, that's not helping me on chapter 2. Sorry.
That's part of what I liked about it. It's like, when it's talking about, what's the American city, the Sprawl, where it's just like he briefly discusses kind of like where they're going, how it works, what it was like, versus being like, and in the 1900s there was nuclear war and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not giving you this giant backstory. Instead, it's just like, this is how it is as part of his experience of it, and that's how you pick it up. It's like, it feels very real and lived in versus it being like a construction for this particular, like, conceit of a sci-fi story.
I mean, I think complexity is how you get resale value. It's kind of like or replay value. It's like, we have a game where like you didn't get all the side quests done and you're like, oh God, like I didn't even know that I was supposed to go into this side area and like complete all this stuff to get all this stuff. And you find out at the end of the game, it's like, oh, I definitely got to go back and I got to understand, I got to redo it and like, play it again. Like this book has the exact same kind of replay value. It's like, oh shit, I didn't even understand what was going on half the time. Let me go back and reread it. And then when you get that second reread and you're like, oh, I actually understand stuff. And every rereading gives you a little bit more depth. That's what defines like a page turner kind of book, like a Harry Potter book, where you read it through, you're like, okay, I understood 100% of it first time through. Versus books where it's like Lord of the Rings sometimes gets super complicated. You're like, wait, what the heck is going on? Let me go and reread this, and you have like all this depth, and like you keep going and going through it. It's like, oh, and then that's how this tied into that and that and that and that. I like it. I like depth. Because I'm a masochist when it comes down to reading.
I think, John, what Vince is trying to say is you will reread it and like it.
I will reread it. I think you got to get me to reread it. Usually, if I read a book, I want to read it once and understand it. So,
wait. I think Stavros said it wrong. Okay, imagine a pistol at your forehead. You will reread it and you will like it.
I'm like, so we're gonna read Ulysses next show, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Oh God, John would hate anything like. Stream of consciousness is like John's antithesis in life.
No, at least in Stream of Consciousness, they explain what they're thinking about at the time. Like Jack Kerouac's books are actually pretty good. This is just awful. This is just terrible.
I think we are never doing another William Gibson book.
I know it's a trilogy. It's a trilogy.
It's a Sprawl series. The whole Sprawl series.
We can upload him on every single week.
Oh no,
John will quit the podcast.
All right. Well, enough about that. So let's move on to this. Its influence with the genre. So you've already kind of touched about this quite a bit. I mean, personally, I saw a relationship with a couple other works that are also kind of in the cyberpunk genre. I think Blade Runner. The first third of the book, all I could think in my head was like Harrison Ford walking through that city in Blade Runner. That's exactly how it makes me feel. Yeah. It made me feel like flavor-wise. It's exactly how. And the funny thing is, Blade Runner came out 2 years before this book came out.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is there's like a couple things where I was like, oh, so this is where all this comes from. Like, I think the obvious one is you read Molly and you instantly think Trinity from The Matrix when you read her description. But for the turn, I was like, oh, this reminds me of Blade Runner. Even like kind of the description inside the computers, I was like, oh, this is like Tron. And I was like, oh, both those movies came out years before this came out. But then there's all the stuff that's like brand new, like the cyber enhancements and those sorts of things. Like maybe they were kind of in other types of movies before, but not quite like not at all like this.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Again, there's not even much like it in the present. Like, The Matrix was spawned off of this, and that's like The Matrix is a big hit because it's so different from everything else. But like even nowadays, when you read literature, like Ready Player One, a bunch of things kind of like this, but very, very different. I think this book showed up and it made its mark, and people have been like, I'm not going to replicate it exactly.
Like the thing I was thinking about it is like this book has all of that. So it's like, yeah, Blade Runner is very specifically like this one type of city. Tron's very specifically like the going in the computers. Matrix is very specifically like, oh, this type of black leather in a computer style thing. Yes.
The movie is black leather.
Where, I mean, seriously.
Yeah, it is black leather.
Yeah, whereas this feels like all of it's integrated into like a fully realized future. That's why it feels much less like a conceit and more like a vision of what could happen or something like that.
That's true. So going back to the Matrix for a second. So, we need a silly topic here. So, you guys, you made the direct comparison of Molly to Trinity in the Matrix. So who wins in a fight here? I feel like this is a pretty close fight. So imagine Trinity in the Matrix versus Molly with her reflex enhancements and
in the Matrix. We're talking
in the Matrix
cyber fight.
Like Matrix Trinity versus Molly with her crazy reflexes and knife fingernails. Who wins in a fight here?
Matrix Trinity works. Yeah.
She learns the laws of physics. She doesn't have to obey the laws of physics. She just uses her mind.
Yeah.
Well, she's not the one. She can't bend spoons with her mind.
But in real life,
other stuff.
In real life, Molly wins. She beats Trinity and all the Amazon packages that arrive at your door. She slices them with the razor blades. They die. But in the Matrix, like Trinity, like learns how to fly helicopters, launch RPGs, learns martial arts, all that type of stuff in like 5 seconds each. I'm pretty sure she would shoot Molly to death, given that Molly is not particularly a big fan of guns.
Did they ever do the mind download thing like in the Matrix? I can't remember.
No.
They have Microsofts, and not to be confused with Microsoft from today, but there is you buy Microsofts and you plug them in and then you get knowledge. So there is conceivably something that could,
because I was remembering that's something that like straight up happens, not necessarily in the same way, but that also happened in Forever War, where they're just like, no, you're Super General of Ages. Yay!
That is true. I'm going to have to say maybe it's closer than this because, functionally Trinity in the Matrix has really fast reflexes and is good at martial arts, whereas, Molly has had cybernetic enhancements to make her reflexes really good too. So I feel like it might be like a closer fight than you guys think.
I know digitally, cybernetic reflexes don't really count for stuff because it's all digital, right? So it's as fast as electrons flow, right?
So
it's like if you have a mechanical arm in real life, it doesn't come with you into the Matrix and be like, oh, my arm is just as strong digitally as it was in real life,
I still say Trinity
wins. Yeah. I was just gonna say random different setting show-offs are always random because you could always argue it's like who gets the benefit of what settings and all this stuff and blah blah blah.
I think it's guns versus finger knives is what it kind of boils down to because Trinity uses pretty much all guns, and Molly uses pretty much all knives. And I think Molly actually takes more damage in the course of this book to gunfire than Trinity does in most of the movies.
Yeah, Molly's still pretty human in the book, even with razors and enhancements and stuff like that.
She's like Catwoman. I don't think Halle Berry really beat anyone in a straight up fight.
I feel like Trinity is more of like a frontline soldier, whereas Molly is more like secret
assassin.
Time. Yeah, she's kind of more in the shadows. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, talking about we're still talking about the influence of this book. So does this book hold up in a modern in a modern light? We're reading this in 2017, a zillion years after this came out. I know John automatically has said no, fuck this book.
I don't know those exact words that I use, but it is the exact words that I would use.
Okay.
Stavros, your language is so great. John wants to appropriate it.
Yeah. I do think it's pretty smart not describing not defining everything very specifically, because it kind of leaves it more open for how is it actually going to end up or that sort of thing. It feels much less cheesy than we're talking about movies that are definitely dated, where it's like Star Wars, it's like, look at all that 70s hair and stuff like that. Yeah. But
I think you just dissed Star Wars.
I love Star Wars, but it's hilarious. Watching A New Hope's amazing, where it's just this is clearly not yet the 80s.
I don't think that this book is actually all that. I don't think it's actually all that influential or culturally significant, other than coming up with the word cyberspace. For the most part, many of the constructs that he brings up in the book are stuff that was already known, already popularized in sci-fi culture beforehand. And I guess, it's a cyberpunk book, but I kind of think this book is more like Rocky Horror Picture Show or something. It's a novelty. I don't think it's all that. A small group of people really, really enjoy it. I don't know why it won so many awards.
Never again.
I don't know if you win an award. I don't think that technically means that a small group of people enjoyed it. I think that a large people group enjoyed it. Otherwise, it would not have gotten voted for so many awards. I think that the book is quite novel, and I mean, just saying I was born in '83, so like back then when I was growing up, like the internet like was like not even a thing. Like I had like dial-up modems and all that type of stuff. Jacking in was like light years beyond all that. Like like actual living, like having battles and stuff like that online. It's like, are you kidding? I was playing Worms, like online at that time. Like that's the only type of battle I ever fought. Like it was just like the book was like, and I read it today. It's kind of like reading The Matrix in book form, and The Matrix is still to me like a very modern, a very good movie. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, Matrix is a great movie," and if you like The Matrix, I think you would like the book. Maybe the writing style is not your kind of flavor, but to say that The Matrix was like a few people liked it and like it's kind of a hokey one-off kind of thing, it's like I still think a lot of people would say Matrix is pretty, top, like 50 at least on their movie list. Like that was completely different, very interesting, very amazing. So I still give it 2 thumbs up, and I would say that I would encourage people to read it.
Okay. Yeah, actually, we're going to kind of get into the final thoughts. And so Vincent says 2 thumbs up. Any final thoughts from you guys on this?
I would say, given the reservations, everything everyone's talked about, if it sounds interesting, you'd probably enjoy it. If it sounds like the reading isn't for you, you probably wouldn't. I would
Wow,
say
Charlie, splitting the line completely. If you like it, you might like it. If you don't like it, you might not like it.
Definitive, Charlie.
Very strong statement, Charlie. I don't know. You're going on a limb there, buddy.
I'm not sure that the Matrix. Yeah, it was influenced. I think probably quite a bit by this
Rastafarian dude who flies you on a ship to the final battle.
On the other hand, I think there's probably just as much influence from Ghost in the Shell as there is on the Matrix as there is on this.
Ghost in the Shell is much later, I think. I want to say Ghost in the Shell is much later than this book.
Well, yeah, it is later than this book. That's true. So you might make the argument that Ghost in the Shell is influenced by.
We didn't even get into the stuff about like the nature of AI and all that stuff. Like this book, it gets into a lot of stuff that it's been explored a lot since then. But just the fact that it's like, yeah, there's like AI, there's the internet, there's all these different things that.
Like I think this is after Terminator and Skynet. Like this is like one of the first ones where like AI is a thing, and like they're breaking out, they're going to try and take over the world, or they're like illegal. Like I guess you might say like there are other books who have done it like better, but this is a pretty cutting edge book, I would say.
If only we had much more time to talk about it, but alas, that is roughly the end of episode 4.
Most controversial episode so far.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see if John, keeps going with these reading suggestions.
Yeah, by this sample, 25% of our listeners may not like this book. So just throw it out there.
Hey, I just hope 100% like the podcast. 25% can hate the book. I don't care about that.
That's right.
Speaking of people listening to the podcast, if any of you guys have feedback or suggestions on books we should read and discuss, as usual, you can reach us at subplotofcoursepodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at subplotpodcast. And for next month's episode, we're going to be talking about the first time we've really tackled a big IP, a big league IP tie-in novel. We'll be doing Catalyst, a Rogue One story by James Luceno. So say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Adios, amigos.
See you, folks.